Sir, we are ready to go. I think I'll hand over the stage to Anirudh and Nikita, who will be the MC for the session.
Good morning, distinguished guests, members of the faculty, and my dear friends. Welcome to the second day of Conventus 2020, the annual management conclave of International Management Institute, New Delhi. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought the world to a screeching halt. Institutions, corporations, and government alike are getting accustomed to this new normal. Conventus is a legacy that we at IMI New Delhi are determined to continue, come what may. And in that very spirit, we are proud to announce that for the first time, Conventus 20 is being held online. My fellow compare Anirudh and I, Nikita, shall take you through the Operation Summit of Conventus 20. This year, Conventus is structured around the theme Survival and Growth in the VUCA World, Adaptability, Agility, and Sustainability.
The acronym VUCA, which stands for Volatility, Uncertainty, Complexity, and Ambiguity, has gained massive popularity in the business world over the past few decades. The VUCA world demands leaders to come up with realistic and applicable solutions, firstly by tackling volatility with visionary approach and by not allowing small roadblocks to come in the way of overarching vision. Further, businesses need to engage uncertainty by bridging the gap between the causes and their effects. Firms can counter complexity by breaking down the loops of reactions and promoting proactivity towards solving problems. To conquer ambiguity, continuous learning and swiftness in decision making is key. For years, we have seen industries change entire business plans overnight to match current market trends. The 2002 market crash had disastrous effects on various industries. Similarly, the 2008 financial crisis had detrimental socio-economic effects on the world. A common factor in both situations is how unprepared it left everyone. As future leaders, understanding how to tackle these four elements will give us the opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. Survival in a VUCA world is the need of the hour, and growth is the true way forward. Before we proceed further, we would like to play the Conventus 20 theme video.
Business often takes inspiration from the art of war strategies. Gone are the days when a single textbook solution could work all molds. Challenges have become multifaceted. As experienced by the US Army during the Cold War, VUCA, an acronym describing how less they knew or could think regarding situations. COVID-19 pandemic has thrown the world into disarray. Everything has become increasingly unstable. The concept of clarity is muddled. Predicting the future is nearly impossible. Interconnectivity is more chaotic than ever. So, how do you plan on coping with the new normal?
Before we begin with the discussions, we would like to give a brief introduction of our speakers. We are delighted to introduce you all to our first panelist, Dr. Rakesh Sinha, founder, Reflexive Supply Chain Solutions. Dr. Sinha has worked with Godrej Consumer Products for almost 4 decades and was the global head of supply chain, manufacturing, and IT before his superannuation. His experience spans across several countries. He holds the distinction of being the first holder of a doctorate in supply chain management in India. His main area of expertise lies in designing and running agile supply chain to synchronize product supply with consumer demand on a dynamic basis. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next panelist for the session is Mr. Vrish Bhan Vaidya, Head of Sourcing and Supply Chain Uber for the APAC region. Mr. Bhan is a certified sourcing, procurement, and S2P leader with over 20 years of global experience across industries and verticals. He has done roles in strategic sourcing, procurement operations, consulting, solution design, procurement transformation, and many others. He has won various awards including Procurement Leader of the Year 2018 from ISM India and is a frequent speaker at various conferences. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It gives me great honor to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Rajiv Ganju, Senior Vice President, Operations, Luminous Power Technologies Private Limited. Mr. Ganju has over 30 years of global supply chain experience and has worked with LG Electronics, Motorola, and Samsung Electronics in the past. He is a certified black belt from Korea for Six Sigma activities and also a certified executive coach of the Grow model from Schneider Electric. He has won many prestigious awards like the Great Manager Award by People Business and Times Ascent and the Frost & Sullivan Manufacturing Excellence Award, to name a few. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next panelist in this session is Ms. Samruddhi Utturkar, Country Director, FinOrient Pharma India Limited. She has 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry in the local and European markets. She has worked in different sectors of the supply chain of the pharma industry, including procurement, inventory management, supplier relationship management, and risk management. Her core experience has been in the European pharmaceutical market, which is a highly regulated and complex supply chain. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Alvis Lazarus, Chief Executive Officer, Hesol Consulting. Mr. Lazarus is a senior leader in supply chain and logistics with almost 2 decades of hands-on supply chain experience in devising country-level and global supply chain strategies. He has handled all India operations at 3M, Flipkart, and Common Flow, and also served in a global consultant role with Caterpillar. He is also a certified Lean and Six Sigma MBB and Lean TOC champion. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Our moderator for this session is Mr. Sunil Bharadwaj, ex-Deputy General Manager, Strategy and Supply Chain, Lifestyle Business at Raymond Limited. Mr. Bharadwaj is a supply chain and operations excellence professional with around 18 years of experience. He has worked in diverse sectors such as building materials, construction, FMCG, water and power, and textile and apparel. He is an APEX certified supply chain professional and APEX certified in logistics, transportation, and distribution. He is a member of the Association for Supply Chain Management and Institute of Business Forecasting and Planning. We welcome you, sir.
So thank you all very much for the wonderful introductions, and which now brings me to finally donning the hat of a moderator, and we'll quickly jumpstart the event. Thank you so much. And like I said at the start, what we'll do is, first of all, it's an absolute privilege and honor to be part of such an erudite and distinguished panel. Given the wealth of experience and knowledge and expertise that they bring, I think the collective experience of my 5 co-panelists is anything between 130 and 140 years plus. So that's the wealth of knowledge and experience that we have at our disposal. And over the next 65 minutes, we will hopefully have a fruitful discussion. So coming to the topic quickly.
Sunil sir,
yes.
Excuse me for interfering. So if you can just give us 5 more minutes to just wrap up the PPT before.
5 more minutes?
5 more minutes to wrap up the PPT. We have a PPT made. It will be very short and quick.
Okay.
Excuse me for the interference.
Okay.
In light of the main theme of Conventus 2020, the topic for discussion in this session of the Operation Summit is digital supply chain, the new normal in the world of VUCA. The Operation Summit will discuss the impact of VUCA on supply chains and logistics as they have had a major setback in lieu of the ongoing pandemic. The industry has had a complete discrete makeover, intensively creating networks, automating and analyzing processes to significantly improve performance and customer satisfaction. The global supply chain has seen enormous changes over the last 100 years, from the introduction of new handling procedures to relying on ocean-going vessels and from computerization to containerization. Global supply chains are both more complex and more efficient than they've ever been. Let us towards a digital supply chain. Artificial intelligence and robotics, big data, Internet of Things, blockchain, and cloud computing.
How does the VUCA world affect the supply chain? VUCA demands insights into the possible room for opportunities and then undertaking respective measures to reduce, reorganize, and rethink strategies on how to operate profitably in a dynamic environment. The following are some of the ways in which VUCA has had an effect on the supply chain. It challenges the conventional approach. The situations demand initiatives and innovation. It calls for preparedness for consequences of unpredictability. The impact of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has acted as a catalyst for companies to rapidly react and adapt to the digital supply chain.
The digital supply chain consists of 6 key elements: integrated planning and execution. Through supply chain integration, that is connecting suppliers all the way to customers, the right product is delivered into the customer's hand quickly and efficiently. Logistics visibility. Better visibility helps companies optimize their choices under different conditions using the information to alert factories, warehouses, and customers to endangered arrival times and engage in mitigation actions. Procurement 4.0. Digitizing procurement will radically change the tools and talents required, add new categories to be sourced, and transform value proposition of the procurement function. Smart warehousing. The aim of smart warehousing is to improve efficiency and safety through the automation of virtually every ordinary warehousing activity. Autonomous and B2C logistics. The networking and integration of logistics processes in and out of trading companies and production facilities has considerably increased the speed, flexibility, and controllability. Prescriptive supply chain analytics. This implies the ability to optimize for any number of factors across the entire chain depending on circumstances and then be able to actively modify the chain accordingly.
The digitization of the supply chain enables companies to address the new requirements of the customers, the challenges on the supply side as well as demand, and the remaining expectations in efficiency improvement. Digitization brings about a supply chain 4.0, which provides higher speeds, reducing the delivery time of high runners to a few hours, higher granularity, giving a strong push towards micro-segmentation and mass customization ideas based on customer demands, greater efficiency, optimizing the supply chain to ensure an optimal fit to the business requirements, greater flexibility, allowing flexible reactions to changing demand or supply situations, and finally, higher accuracy, ensuring end-to-end transparency so that all stakeholders hear and decide based on the same facts.
Let us now look at some examples of companies that have digitized their supply chain. Decathlon is a sports retailer that owns 850 stores in 22 countries. It is a prime example of a company that has integrated IoT into its supply chain. The company wanted to ensure that sales were not being lost because shoppers were not able to find the desired products. This drove them to deploy the radio frequency identification or RFID tagging as a solution for their brands. Through the use of this technology, Decathlon tracks products throughout the entire supply chain from factories to the distribution centers and stores all over the world.
What are the results of such an innovation? Only 5 years after the first RFID test took place in 2010, the RFID solution deployed by Decathlon showed gains within the whole supply chain. Among the multiple benefits of the solution, the improvements in inventory tracking and shelf availability are significant. Thanks to the RFID tagging of every product, a full store inventory can be performed as often as every 1 to 4 weeks, depending on the store, instead of twice per year using barcodes. The overall product visibility is improved and labor costs have been reduced. Another company that has successfully integrated technology with their existing supply is Maersk Line. Maersk Line is the world's largest shipping company, which has developed global IoT solutions with Ericsson that are making waves in the ocean cargo transport industry. They operate in 343 ports across 121 countries. Maersk faced a logistical challenge in monitoring 300,000 refrigerated containers transporting fresh produce that needs to be kept chilled or frozen throughout its journey. With many ships operating far out to sea and isolated from technical support in the event of a power failure. To tackle this, the Danish company partnered with Ericsson in 2012 to install the remote container management system, which transmits vital stats such as temperature, location, and power supply via satellite. This information is sent to the cloud and analyzed in a central office.
What are the results of this upgrade? Since the launch of remote container management in 2015, Maersk has generated significant operational savings, matured its internal processes, and gained operational experience in handling data. Currently, close to 60% of reefers require only visual inspection after a trip. This in turn has reduced costs, given faster turn times, provides better resource utilization, and reduced CO2 emissions.
Now we request Mr. Sunil Bhardwaj, the moderator for this session, to take over the proceeding. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful presentation and sharing your quick views, tips, case studies on the impacts of digital supply chains, its benefits, etc. That is a very good way to start. And now I'll quickly move on to Dr. Sinha first. Thank you again, all of you. It's an absolute privilege, honor to be sharing the stage with such a wonderful panel and such an erudite, experienced and very knowledgeable panel. I would now go to Dr. Sinha and request each one of you to spend a minute to share your opening remarks and overview on this topic. When you talk of digital supply chain, given the fact that we are in the VUCA world and there's so much uncertainty around us, and given the fact that we live in these very difficult times owing to Corona, so what do you think are the imperatives, and what exactly does digital supply chain tell you, or what are your views on this? Can we start with Dr. Sinha?
Yeah. Thanks, Anil. So in my view, any supply chain has to be designed, operated, and improved based on what the customers want, or what the consumers want. In case of FMCG, foods and pharma, what the consumers want. And if you look at the consumers, their want should be expressed in their words. So in terms of products, because consumers would typically demand high level of availability. So when a consumer goes to the store, the brand she is looking for should be available on the shelf. So high level of availability is a consumer requirement. And the second major requirement is freshness. I'm not considering quality and cost. Those are given to play in a particular category. But what differentiates between different brands and different companies is the availability and freshness metric, both of which are important. And digital supply chains help us in improving this. So unless we can tie up a digital initiative to improvement in availability and improvement in freshness, that initiative is unlikely to give major results. There's a lot of things you can do, but you need to pick and choose what should be implemented and what should be the sequence of implementing. And my criteria, at least the filter should be whether it helps a consumer in terms of better availability and higher freshness of the product. So that's what exactly.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for your opening remarks. Yes. And I'll just request all the other panelists also to just spend a minute so that we'll directly get into the themes. Can I now come to Mr. Vaidya for his opening?
Sure. So the way I kind of read or understand supply chain management is sort of a complete marketplace. I'll give a very quick example for you to understand. Amazon or Uber or any other company. So on one side you have the seller, on the other side you have the buyers. So the end to end of it is basically the supply chain. It's not just about connected to logistics. It's all about planning, understanding the consumer requirement. How does the procurement work? How does logistics work in that? And after that, what is your aftermarket service? So that is where globally that term supply chain management has slightly changed to supply management, which actually connect the complete dot of the life cycle of anything that happens in the world. So when I'll be talking about it, I'll be talking about, the complete function, not just about say planning or say logistics. So I'll be talking about, a lot about the customer experience, how it reshapes your, organization strategy and culture going forward, because it's a dynamic normal. It's not a new normal as we call it in Uber. We call it dynamic normal because whatever is happening today may not happen tomorrow. So we have given it a new term internally.
Thanks
That's
for those
what I'll talk
insights
about.
and perspectives, Vishwan. Now may I come to Ms. Uturkar for her opening remarks, quick thoughts.
Thank you. I think both the esteemed panelists have kind of underlined all the importance of supply chain, and maybe one I would just like to add is that when we say it is as end-to-end supply chain, it also is also a value chain. So whatever we do, I think we should be adding value to the customer at the other side and to the overall cycle, to the entire supply chain. So whether we are being sustainable as a seller, as a supplier to the customer is one of the most important things. So when we think of digitizing supply chain, we have to see how controlled and sustainable it is over a long period of time, and how we can continue with giving that enhanced value to the customer at the end of it.
Excellent. I think all my co-panelists have summarized it beautifully so far. I'll now quickly move on to Mr. Ganju for his opening views.
First of all, good morning, Sunil, and good morning to all students. And it's a privilege to share the dice with all esteemed panelists. So it's a pleasure being here. So I'll just give a different perspective. Actually, digital supply chain and why it is important. Like, if we talk about initially, we saw today somebody showed digital 4.0, supply chain 4.0. The supply chain started organizing, and Germany started a concept with Industry 1.0. Then, because before that it used to be foreman in charge of a shop, and it used to be totally market controlled by the supply chain. It was not a consumer's market, and consumer was supposed to take what the supplier or what the manufacturer has to supply to him, and we will stand in queues. Remember those days of HMT watches? You used to stand in queues to get your watch. You never had any choice. So then I think slowly the changes happened, and Industry 3.0 made a supply chain, 4.0 tried to digitize it. But today with digital supply chain, another word has got added. That is digital and tailored supply chain. Today we have to give to the customer what he wants at best possible speed. I really appreciate what Dr. Sinha said, that quality and cost is normal. It has to have good quality, it has to have minimum cost. What will be important that customer wants it fast delivery, customer can change his mind on the spot, and how flexible and tailored supply chains are to give that new normal and give that product to the customer. That is, I think, today it is not only digital, it is digital and tailored supply chain.
Excellent, very well summarized, Dr. Ganju. Thank you for your perspectives on this, very vast and complex topic which I said earlier. And lastly, I would like to now come to Mr. Lazarus for his quick opening views before we jump into the themes.
Yeah.
Over to you.
So, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So, my opening remarks are going to be in two lines in terms of digitalization or digitizing the supply chain. Why everyone is suddenly talking about it? So that is the first question I'm going to answer about. And second thing, what it means to an organization when we talk about digitization. Because now everyone is talking about, yes, digitizing, I'm going to have a digital supply chain. But actually, if you have to decode it to an organization, what it means. These are the two things I'm going to give as an open remark. The first one, the digital supply chain concept, it is not new. It is actually decades old. We have been talking about right from when I completed my engineering, there is a form of digitization of supply chain. So what is actually changed in 2020 is the sense of urgency. It's as simple as that. Why there is a sense of urgency? Previously, whenever in the form of internal consultants or external consultants who always try to predict the future, they always tell this is the need of the hour, but it has never been heard fully. So now, because of this pandemic situation, all the issues within the supply chain started surfacing. We have been thinking that our supply chain is the best. Now we have started identifying, no, there are weakest links. This is the biggest change every organization is facing, which actually made a sense of urgency in a digital supply chain or digitizing your supply chain. This is the first one. The second one, which is very, very important, that digitizing what it means to a startup, what it means to an MSME, what it means to a corporate, what it means to an MNC, it's absolutely different. If we don't know about these nuances, we will be talking about it, but we won't get the actual return on investment from the effort of digitizing your supply chain.
Excellent. So thank you to all my co-panelists for their wonderful opening remarks and their insights. Now I would like to go back to Dr. Sinha to begin the opening theme of the discussion today. And that is to, think about where do we start? How do we actually formulate a supply chain digital strategy or a roadmap? And what sort of an approach should we adopt? Should it be looking at downstream first, then upstream, or moving in the reverse direction? Should it be a functional or a process approach? Should it be a combination of both? Should it be an integrated approach? So if one were to draw a roadmap or chart out a supply chain digital strategy, so in your opinion, sir, where does one really begin this? Where do we start?
Yeah. So typically, these are my views. I think the supply chains have to be consumer focused. They can't be inside out or organization internal focused. And for it to be consumer focused, what's important is that the supply chains are designed in a way where all supply chain actions originate from what the consumers are doing in the marketplace. So it starts basically three components. One is how agile are we in sensing the changing pattern of consumer demand. And the more agile we are, the better we can design and adapt to the changes in the marketplace. So that's the first point. And having sensed the demand properly, preferably on a daily basis at the most granular level of SKU and distributor level or SKU and store level, how do we ensure that we fulfill this demand? So there are several ways of doing it. One is obviously the replenishment-based supply chain, which starts from the consumer end and goes all the way to distribution, goes back to manufacturing, and goes back to procurement. All these actions originating from what's happening at the marketplace. So that's the design of the supply chain. Two things very important, two capabilities. One is how responsive each leg is. And digitization can help in improving the responsiveness of each and every lane, be it distribution, be it manufacturing, be it procurement. And the second capability is how flexible is each link. So once we design and start running the supply chain, have a good demand sensing system, there are several hotspots which would come out where we feel we are not flexible, and that's coming in the way of either product availability or product freshness. So we need to apply digital technology to improve flexibility in that leg. And that sets the priority as to where applying digital would give me the maximum return. Because I won't advise anyone to go end to end and get lost as to what value are we getting. So digital has to solve specific problems. So whether it's improving flexibility, whether it's improving responsiveness, if we are let me call it lazy in certain legs of the supply chain, those have to be the starting point. And using all the principles of those of us who are familiar with TOC as to where the constraints are at this point in time, and whether digitization can help me in solving that constraint. If it helps, then go ahead and digitize it. If there are some other solutions which need not be in the digital world, go and do that. But ultimately, we want to serve the consumers better. We want to be more flexible. We want to be more responsive. And we should be getting better and better at sensing the demand at the marketplace. So that's
excellent, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Thank you for setting the tone for this interesting theme to begin with. And I think you did allude to the fact that we need to be flexible, responsive, agile, focus more on pull-based distribution systems. And I think the processes and design will, govern the digital roadmap. They will act more as enablers. That's what I understand from you. And now we'll maintain the same order. I would like to quickly come to Mr. Vaidya for his views on this whole, formulation of supply chain strategy, thinking of a roadmap. Where do you start? Upstream, downstream? I mean, how does one really go about it? Assume that you have a discussion with your team. Now, how do you explain this to them?
Sure. So Before I kind of share my thoughts, I would say what Mr. Lazarus said actually matters a lot. It depends which organization you are talking about, because depending upon the size of the organization, depending upon where you are currently, that matters a lot. Unless you have done an assessment of what is your current state, just defining that where you want to reach may or may not help. So many a times it doesn't make sense that the whole organization is disturbed and you say, okay, I want to change everything. If that is the plan that organization have, they have to do a very thorough risk assessment. Maybe they might achieve a big change by doing a one large supply chain shift, but does it impact their current state also, wherein consumers start complaining or internal staff complaining? So the strategy definitely varies from organization to organization. Generally, it is recommended that you start doing some small things, do some assessment, because unless you understand how your internal people would react, how your consumers would react, it is very, very risky to take that step. And some small changes may not sometimes need a digitization. And that's where sometimes the concept of lean and Six Sigma also come into play. And these are the things that have brought the digitization as at a later stage, right? If there are a few things that you can improve by your in-house tools, just do that before you plan a full digitization. So understanding what your consumer demand, definitely that is very, very important. So first you have to define where you want to achieve, what is your current state. You have to look at what kind of revenue, what kind of budgets you have. If you don't have budget, planning a big shift may not work. You have to prioritize things. Till the time you don't prioritize, write down 10 things and say, okay, by doing these 2 things, if I get efficiency of maybe 30%, 50%, just plan that. So it varies from organization to organization. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Vaidya, for those perspectives. I think more than looking at functional strategies or upstream or downstream or the business benefits, I think the decision variables and the decision drivers will vary from industry to industry or sector to sector. So thanks for bringing in that perspective. Now I will quickly move on to Ms. Uturkar for her views on this topic regarding formulating a digital roadmap or formulating a digital strategy. So what would be those governing drivers?
I think the most important thing for an organization is to understand why they want to digitize the supply chain. What is that need that drives you to make this change? And then once you have identified that gap, what do you want to address? Is it that you want to bring more visibility in your processes? Do you want to be more quick to the market? Once you have understood the need and you have understood where the gap is, then you have to identify which tool you need to digitize. I mean, do you want to go with IoT or you want to use cloud technology or AI? What is it that you need? So it is just not because that everybody is running in the direction of digitizing the supply chain, so we also go over there. First, have your ideas clear, underline the needs that are there, and then we can go ahead setting up a strategy for supply chain. And then also look, do we have the right capabilities, the right competencies within the organization for us to manage such kind of a change, and what kind of a culture, because when you're going for such kind of a change, the business transformation is also important within the organization. And are we ready for such kind of a change? And what are the timelines that we are doing when we're going for such changes? So these are some of the factors which will play a very crucial role when you are trying to create a map for the digitizing the supply chain.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Uturkar. I think all the views have been aggregative and additive in a manner of speaking, because everyone is adding his or her own dimension to this topic. So thank you so much for that. That's plenty for me to write down as well. Mr. Ganju.
So I think my co-panelists have said everything. I really agree that digitization is different for different. It is different for SME. It is different for B2B. It is different for B2C. It is different for large corporates. So digitization theory and philosophy is different for different companies. I totally agree with Rakesh that it starts with TOC, theory of constraints, and it starts with demand planning. So what the consumer wants. So then to understand first what consumer wants, we have to first focus on the culture. We have to have digital culture in the organization. Unless we have digital culture on the organization, it will become a cosmetic bucket and we will not know it will follow that garbage in, garbage out. We don't know where to handle digitization and will not get the desired results. So before we dream of digitization, we have to spend good time in changing the culture of the organization and making them understand what theory of constraints is and how TOC can be a way of life and how it can benefit the consumers. So it has to start from there. And second thing, when we talk about digitization, the next word comes that what is ROI on digitization? So which process we should digitize? Is it really important that we digitize the front end or we digitize the back end? We digitize the upstream or we digitize the downstream? In my opinion, like you asked a very right question, the first focus should be on the culture. The second focus should be how we capture actual demand planning and we really find where the constraints are. Then we have to attack and slowly build a story around constraints and digitize. And ultimately the future, like we see in certain countries, will be that we'll have smart factories and this will have smart logistics, this will have smart products, and ultimate in digitization will be that these smart products come from five different supply chains. They get assembled maybe at consumer's home and he wants whatever color, whatever feel, whatever look he has, and that will be the ultimate in digital supply chains or smart products.
Thank you very much. I think when you said 4-5 supply chains, I hope it is not largely China going forward. No offense is meant, but this has become a heated issue now. So, global trade has been impacted by our equation with China and how.
But you cannot ignore world. But you cannot ignore world is a marketplace, and nobody can shrink that marketplace in supply chain.
Just on a side note,
nobody can shrink that.
I agree, sir. I agree completely. Yeah, over to you, Mr. Lazarus.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on digital strategy? Yeah.
Right. So though the topic is challenge in supply chain of VUCA world, going last in a panelist is like most of your points would be taken. The first point what I had is why do we do it, which has been taken by Dr. Samruddhi. So what I'm going to try and do it, take one step back and talk about this. When you talk about supply chain digital strategy. Sometimes people will tell like we should always work as a team. You should not work in isolation. But my 2 cents on setting up supply chain digital strategy is basically you should do it in isolation only with your customers. In the sense, you should like Mr. Dr. Rakesh has said, you should put your customer requirements front. And very very important point I want to tell in there is the customer requirements keep changing. To give some very practical example, think about checking onto a hotel. Like few years before, Wi-Fi is a requirement which will excite the customer. But now if you see, you get into a hotel, Wi-Fi, you won't even, the first thing what you ask is like, can you just give me the Wi-Fi password? So that is a kind of transformation it happens. Just 5 years before, we will probably wait for probably 10-15 days to get a phone. But now after placing an order, people can't even wait for hours to get hold of the phone. So what that means is the biggest problem in strategy is like we'll make the strategy, we will just archive it. That is the biggest problem by the time, because every strategy to make it to an action, it takes years. So you need to revisit that strategy in terms of whether it is up. That too with this kind of COVID-19 situation, things have become pretty dynamic. So I would use tools. For example, voice of customer is the key. For that, you should use tools like Kano model, which we have always studied in our college. But this is the time we need to put it in action. I want to just quickly talk about one example. We are working on a global logistics project where we have revisited the Kano model, which we have done like 1 or 2 years before. We have done a Kano model for global logistics. You won't believe. To give a background, so obviously Kano model have 3 factors: the delight, the performance, and the basic. The basic ones which the customer won't tell. Delight is what will wow the customer. 70% of the delights in the global logistics have made into a basic requirement. That is the kind of transformation we are talking about. So this is absolutely important to revisit the way we understand how or what my customers need, and then set this strategy in isolation. Why I said is sometimes what will happen if you don't do it in isolation, you start thinking about what is possible, what do I have, then you are not going in the right direction. So what you need to do this in isolation, put the plan, then you need to find out what I need. Okay, so those are my thoughts related to this.
So I think what I'll do, I'll play the devil's advocate. I think I'll flip the order now, so that Mr. Lazarum doesn't feel that he's the last. I'll
No,
go
no.
direction. The panelists permit me. Just let me know. Okay, dynamic thinking. So I'll start with you, Mr. Alvis again. I
Sure.
think my second theme or the second question would be related to the first. It is now, how do you actually, create a business case for the digital roadmap? And more so, like most of you said, that it also has a sectoral impact.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the challenges and learnings that we can take from the MSME space? Because there are many big brands and companies that have the financial muscle to invest. Okay, and like Mr. Brisbane and most of you told just a while ago that there is an issue with regard to finances and priorities. And now when we live in this COVID era, when there are more pressing issues around survival. So he's really talking about digital and huge investments and IoT, AR, VR, RPA, etc. Will it really resonate with the top management, or maybe you can take the example of your own consulting practice,
Sure.
and then possibly we can also have a view from the MSME space. What can MSMEs do? Okay, and so that the audience and all of us can get a flavor in terms of how they should address this.
Okay.
So one is how do you make a business case? How do you prioritize your investments? And what are the impacts on the MSME space?
Okay.
Yeah, over to you.
Perfect. So basically, how I see it, before I come to the difference between MSMEs and probably MNCs, those things, I want to put it very short and crisp. How to formulate this strategy? You need to only do two things. One, hear from your customers, hear from your business. These two are absolutely important. These two things sound very, very simple, but me as a consultant, when we go to the different business cases, we have solved close to almost 400 business cases in supply chain. Most of the cases, it goes back to customer is expecting something, we are doing something, and that is where I talked about the Kano model in the previous scenario. So this is one. Second one, very, very crucial thing. We always talk about customer is the king. Customer experience is very, very important. In that, what we miss out is completely our suppliers. So more and more places where we are setting up the business strategy, we give equal importance to the suppliers, because your complete performance as a supply chain relies on your suppliers, because unless you make a very inclusive approach, it's very, very difficult to take care of your customers. These are the 2 points. So first one, hear your customers, and basis that you need to come up with your game plan. And the second one is hear from your operations. Now, another misconception in digitizing supply chain is always digitizing equals to IoT, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. It is not. IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence doesn't even make sense to most of the MSMEs. So my point, the definition of let's go to the definition of digitizing supply chain. It talks about only two things. I'm not going to explain the definition. It talks about, first and foremost thing is in terms of integration. It talks about second thing is in terms of visibility. These is the two problems which actually gets fixed by digitization. So what happens when you talk about visibility? You can talk about anything: visibility of your shipment, visibility of your orders, visibility of what my customers need. This is the problem which actually digitization will fix for you. Second thing, integrated, which we have already talked about. You can't work on upward or downward. You need to work as a whole. And third, very important thing, so whichever improvements you are doing, which is actually giving an integrated approach and it is making your supply chain visible, it's part of your digitizing team. I think today we should take our view from blockchain, IoTs and everything. So because people are too much carried away with those words, actually they are missing out on the crucial things. Without taking much time, let me split the IoT. What is IoT? IoT is a mix of sensors, a cloud-based tool, and analytics. Name any one of this which is not even old by 5 to 10 years. Every technology within IoT is already available. Actually, we put it into a form, and part of the marketing process, people also put a little bit of a sugar coating around. So we should be very clear in terms of what is happening there, because we work with IoT devices. That's the reason I'm telling. So what that means is any form of automation and foolproofing, which is actually making your supply chain visible and it is making integrated, be it a small web-based tool you built by yourself, which help this, then it is part of digitizing your supply chain, not just the IoT, blockchains and the biggies we talk about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Over to you, Mr. Ganju, since you are working in reverse order this time. Mr. Mr. Lazarus will feel a lot better now since he was first.
Good. I think that's a good diverse thought you have come to. So good. So basically, the digital and smart, I would call it rather smart, and I think it has three elements. One is smart people, smart processes, and smart infrastructure. So first thing, it has to begin with smart people. As I told you, that we ignore the culture. You can bring in the best infrastructure, you can bring in the best process, but if people are not trained and understand the importance of digitization, it will totally fail. So that's why I am again repeating myself that first is to create a digital vision and digital culture inside the organization, or a smart culture inside the organization. Second thing, I agree with Elvis, like it has not to be big. Like what will artificial intelligence, machine learning do if your data doesn't have a big history or you have not captured it accurately? So it will not give you good results. IoT, like he said, it will connect all the dots and do some predictive, prescriptive or cognitive analytics. And if the data itself is not mature, the model itself is not mature, it will not give you that. So second thing I'll talk about, it should start with smart processes first. Last should be the infrastructure, because infrastructure, you have to be very careful. Unless you have smart people, you have smart processes. Third thing should be the smart infrastructure. When you talk about smart processes, it has to start small, especially for SME or MSME. For example, automating a PO is not a big digitization. It is already in SAP, it's already in your ERP. But you will have 3 people making those POs and changing the share of business of each supplier because they fancy it. That's why culture is important. You have to tell them that you can put a small patch and the PO will be generated automatically. I think the first digitization should be done there, that we digitize these small processes, try to digitize ourselves. Then we'll implement it faster, and it will not be top driven, it will be bottom up approach, and we will be fascinated by those small digital experiences. And then we should talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality. That should come later. First, let them practice, do it with their own hand. For example, we talk about smart infrastructure and we say big investment, we have to bring robots, cobots. No need. You can have simple pick and place. I was attending one CII conference and I was really, can you imagine a simple cobot pick and place can be made for 15,000 rupees. And it can give you efficiency such good. So I was really, it was a wonderful done by a textile industry. I won't name the industry for privacy purposes, but it was done by a textile industry. They made it at 15,000 rupees. And the success story, they said it had 2 stories. They don't have to bring engineers from Japan or China to rectify the robot because maintenance is very hard. Second thing is, they took a lot of care for that because they took pride in that small innovation. Let's start with those small digitization which can be done inside the factory, and then think of big robots, cobots, or integrated machines or transfer processes which will have big automatic machines. And finally, then we can discuss about machine learning, artificial intelligence. So it has to have a step-step approach. This journey has to have a time frame, because any innovation which comes before time will fail.
Excellent. Thank you for those perspectives, sir. I think I did have a focus question around the role of culture and change management, etc. But I think since most of you have brought it up, thank you so much. I think I'll not address that separately. And also you did allude to 1V, which Mr. Lazarus did. I think most of my presentations, I also talk about the 3 V's, which is around visibility, velocity, and variability. So as long as we are able to manage these counterintuitive forces, I think we have done a great job. And I think, like all of you have rightly pointed out, I think people and process should be more important than the technology. They are at best enablers, and there are enough people there to do it for us. But we need to prioritize in terms of where to focus on. So now may I request Ms. Uturkar to quickly jump in and share her views and perspectives with regard to really making a business case for a digital implementation, and her views and thoughts on the whole MSME space. Since most of these MSME companies are either our suppliers or our customers. So how are they going to cope with this so-called digital onslaught, which has become necessary in a manner of speaking, as Mr. Lazarus just said earlier. Over to you, Ms. Uturkar.
Yep, thank you. I think maybe I would comment on it in two ways. Is that if I have to make a business case for digitization, it would first begin with where do we want to make the change, and second would be how do we want to make the change. And that where is probably the first step where we have to investigate that what do we already have in the organization, like whether we have a good ERP, whether we already have a good process in place, whether we have the competencies, whether we have the budget, and then where are the gaps, like what I said before, where are the gaps, where do we want to focus for the future, what is our vision, create our vision, and be very sure in which direction we are going based on our consumer needs, the market needs, and the changing scenario outside. And then we make a plan of where do we make our investments. We have a limited amount of money, so where do we make our investments? Is it in an area which will give us quick wins? Is it something which will be for a long-term plan which will give us wins? But again, when we are making a long-term plan, is it something which is adaptable, which we can iterate and which we can make quick changes if there is a further change in the environment? How do we focus on the long-term plan? Because there is nothing called long-term now. Everything changes pretty rapidly, like how Mr. Lazarus said. The strategic plans may even collapse instead of a year's time in a few weeks' time. So we need a shorter time frame to rechange and rethink on our future plans. So strategy should be such that we are able to revise it when we are going forward with it. And also, when we are looking at our current processes, we have to see that when we speak of digitizing or automation or integration, how much of the manual activity are we reducing by doing this automation, and what kind of value we are getting out of it? Are our people now more enabled to focus on more value added work by doing this? So what are the benefits we are getting out of this? And using all of this, I think we would be able to make a very focused case study for the business. And second is, I think, also about how do we get the buy-in of all the members in the organization? That's the most important thing. When you're bringing a change, the change culture has to be first brought in by the people. Your people should know why you're making the change. And when that happens, I think the change happens. The change is accepted. If you're going to bring in something and enforce it saying this is the tool and you have to use it, I think it's a cultural shock for the people. So you have to get the buy-in of the stakeholders, of every stakeholder who is involved in the process, and that means your suppliers, your distributors, and whether it is your in-house personnel. Each one, there should be a buy-in for the change. And that is where will be the success coming for the implementation of the digitization. All the other tools that we have spoken of are only tools at the end of it, but your process and your approach should be more robust. I think that's my short view on this. Rest, I think Mr. Lazarus explained it pretty well.
Thank you all. I mean, before I move on to my friend, Mr. Vedya, who represents Uber, which is a technology company as much as it's a company that embodies, supply chain intelligence, supply chain excellence, etc. Before we get into his views, I think there is a, some sort of a trend emerging here. I think each one of you is, telling all of us in the audience that it should be customer first, consumer first. We have to focus on principles around, agility, responsiveness, and the first ask the question, why are we doing it? And then look at the benefits. And I think people and process issues come first. And the technology will only come in later. So we are not really discussing whether it is use of 3D printing or IoT or RP, etc. So I think we are slowly converging in terms of a general thought process here and an agreement, which is always good to have, because in most panel discussions the views are extremely diverse. That makes the whole thing a little more complicated. So with this backdrop, I will now quickly move on to my friend. Over to you, Mr. Vedya. MSMEs, building a business case. How do you go about it? Yeah.
So I would say, specifically talking about MSME, wherein we're planning to do the digitization of supply chain and building a business case for that. My view here is get, out of the box and start thinking, does this digitization help only your function, or is it helping the whole organization? If it is helping your function only and you are getting some sort of benefits there, and the rest of the organization doesn't even feel that, it may not make sense. So, always build a business case wherein the management sees a development in the overall organization than just in your function, and the selling to that, management becomes very, very easy. So that is one thing. Second, we understand that ROI does play a big role. So one should always, look at what is it that you are investing and what are the tangible and intangible benefits that you are getting, and it should not be restricted to say next 6 months or 9 months. Look at, from near, time to a long horizon based, benefit that you might be seeing. Then one should look at, does it really give a competitive advantage to you in case you are making a change? And I can actually quote an example from a MSME which might answer the piece how MSME can react on this. And I'll go back to around 3.5 years ago, what we did in Uber, and it was a very small exercise. You might have seen a lot of companies do this. We plan to brand our cars with Uber sticker, and that was more of a safety initiative. We said, people do face issues when they book a Uber, that which car is a Uber car, because every taxi in India is generally white except few cities. So you see a lot of taxis coming, and it's hard to read the number plate from far. So we said, okay, let's do the branding activity. While it may appear as a marketing activity, we started with the agency. We told them start branding, and you have to brand around 300,000 cars. We saw one person used to do generally 15 to 17 stickers per day. And lately we figured out, the productivity varies from person to person. Someone is doing 17, other is doing 30. So when we went deep into it, we figured out the problem was around, people not turning up because no one was monitoring. They, doing some sort of fraud wherein they will put one sticker and then they will claim, okay, we did, 5 cars. All those things were happening. So we asked the staffing company, how do we solve it? They said, this is how the staffing company works. Our job is to give, people on ground, and if they do or don't work, that is not something which we can monitor, because that's how it happens in India. We said, okay, let's bring a technology element into it. We said, can we put a geotagging to their phones? We'll give an app to you wherein they have to enter the data, how many cases they did, and it will click the live picture of, the vehicle which they tagged. I can tell you, with such a small investment of around 150 rupees per device per month, that productivity of 17 became 60. We were planning to do around 200,000 cars in a month. We did 300, I believe 20,000 cars in all. So what changed there? A very small investment. So it's not that MSCME always have to think on, say, RPA, etc. RPA and all are very, very costly. Sometimes, these small solutions like IoT solutions or tracking solutions, which, they can actually bring a large, difference to the way you operate. So it's all about choosing, the right product and pitching that to the management. So this is how I would say, the business case can be formed easily.
Excellent. Over to you, Dr. Sinha. Do we have your views, sir?
Yeah, good to be the last in the panel. Yeah, so whenever a company, especially MSME, is thinking of improving the customer service defined as availability and freshness, we have to start with whether the supply chain is designed correctly or not. Assuming that it is designed correctly, I will come to the way forward. But if the supply chain itself has a faulty design, there is no point digitizing it. We have to first see whether the supply chain is taking consumer inputs and running the entire supply chain, or the design itself is faulty. Assuming that the design is correct, you would know at any point in time what's really constraining you from fulfilling consumer requirement, whether in which leg of the supply chain that problem is, where exactly. And you can use several TOC tools for finding out where the real constraint is. Now the question is, should we digitize and elevate that constraint or remove that constraint? The answer is no, because in many cases, you should first ask whether I have done something, whether tweaking the manual process will help me elevate it, whether some parameter settings have gone wrong and tweaking the parameter will improve it, whether manually tweaking the process can improve the performance of that constraint. If not, then we have to ask, what's the additional piece of data? If I had that data, then I could have worked much better at this constraint. And if you can identify what that data requirement is, then go and digitize and get that data and integrate it in your process. But without finding out really the need for a missing data, it's not right to just digitize. You won't know what to do with hundreds and thousands of data points that you are getting, unless you know that these 7 data points are what are important which I was not having earlier. If only I had these 7 data points, then I could have run my supply chain better. If you have that thought process, then go ahead and digitize it. But I won't advise that if you find a constraint, then straight away go and digitize it. You may not get any benefit.
Thank you for those views, sir. Very different perspective altogether. Coming back to Mr. Lazarus, I think I'll again start with you now, since we'll be jumping into a slightly different theme, but a connected theme again. I just want to now understand, based on your consulting experience and going forward, I would request each of the panelists to share their own thoughts and experience in terms of how do you actually go and figuring out the whole implementation, and if that is possible, what are some of the challenges and constraints that one may face along this journey. Because now assume that there is a company which has something in mind. Okay, now they are going to finalize a partner. So what has been your experience? Have you been part of any implementation journey, or would you like to share some perspectives with regard to best practices, any constraints, or use of any specific tool or selection of a digital partner? Okay, because this opens a whole new different dimension to the discussion. So now we reach that phase where assume you are going to start your implementation journey. So would request each one of you, starting from Mr. Lazarus, to share your perspectives based on your own functional experience and your own industry. Yes, Mr. Lazarus.
Great. So one, being as a consultant, we have the one of the benefit, or we have the luxury of seeing different organizations adapting to this new change. So that is one benefit we have. So though there are so many different challenges and concerns, I'm going to pick just two things which actually is the core reason why most of this digital supply chain implementation doesn't go as per the plan. The first and foremost thing which we're talking about, the biggest bottleneck in a digital supply chain is the digital roadmap itself. Okay, it may be quite surprising that why I say like this. So I'm going to just quickly explain why it is. So most cases, what is happening, people think like, okay, I am going to use this technology to solve a problem because it worked for someone else. But that it's a very, very big assumption we are taking there, that it worked for someone else and it is going to work for me. I think this is one of the biggest, I would say, as a blunder in terms of a digital roadmap. So most cases when we go in, let me give one example. Like recently, like a month before, we were discussing with a client. They presented on the first day where the project kick started. It's like they very proudly presented their the digital roadmap. So we were just discussing, reviewing it. I just casually asked a question in terms of how long it took for you to build it. So the client very proudly answered, you know what, we just did it in just a week, and they were very happy about it. Then we didn't react because obviously we need to solve things there. Then I had a follow-up question to them asking, okay, great, you did it in 1 week, but how did you arrive at this roadmap? Then again the answer was still more shocking. It's like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we pick the preferences from the industry itself. I think these are the two things we should avoid. One, we should not be in any kind of a constraint or a compulsion or in terms of a time-bound issue whenever you're coming up with this roadmap, because this is what is kind of a rail in which your entire organization is going to focus. This is the first thing. Second thing, though, yes, referencing your competitors, it's going to save a lot of time. It will give you insights, but that is just a starting point. You can't just take that and assume it is going to work for me. So probably you need to take that and then make it customized what would work for you, because there are two things which is completely different organization to organization, which cannot be changed. Number one is culture. Okay, very, very important. The culture is the creating. In the culture, I am also talking about the flavor of the business model as well. And second thing, which is even more crucial, the current state, where with the same competition, where you are in versus your competitor could be completely different, and that made the solution completely different altogether. So these are the two key things which I would put from my experience. I leave it to the rest of the panelists to share any other challenges what they might have faced.
Over to you, Mr. Ganju, in terms of any implementation journey, best practices, any pitfalls, any risks, anything that you have learned in terms of choosing the right partner, choosing the right tool. How should one really go about it? One has to really strategize and think about
started with our wiring device factory. Wiring device factory is nothing but where we make smart switches, sockets, as you saw, which are in the market. And they are in Schneider brands, they are in Luminous brand, and we also export it to Europe. So we used to have, as we said, we used to have a customer problem when we send it to Europe. These switches and sockets have very high number of references, maybe close to say around 2000 references, 2500 references. So the manufacturing is in a cell. So when you have so many references, you cannot have straight line manufacturing. So you have a cell manufacturing, something like watches. So watches have too many references. So you will have some kind of a cell manufacturing there also. For example, Titan is a good example for that. I worked with Timex also. So in what used to happen, some references used to get mismatched in a box, and we used to get large complaints from the customer that there is mixing. So we started our first digitization journey from this cell manufacturing. And what we thought is that we can identify by the weight of the product. So we did a weighing VUCA. Means we assumed that every switch will have a particular weight, particular model will have a particular weight. And once we weigh it, if the weight is correct, then only the serial number of that box will be taken out. And we assume that everything, it is packed okay and numbers are correct and it has the correct reference. So then when we started this journey, we also thought, we got an idea, why don't we integrate testing into it so that we are assured that whenever this switch is tested by the tester, then it is integrated to pick the weighing machine will start only when it is tested okay. Then we further thought, like, so that's what I said, people and process is more important than the infrastructure. When you go to outside, they will tell you, okay, weighing okay, we'll get you, we'll do this, because they do not understand. You understand your supply chain much better than your vendor will do. So then we integrated it to the screwdriver. We call it intelligent screwdriver. Now, intelligent screwdriver, when it completes all its processes, then only the tester will get, the second process will get activated. So intelligent screwdriver, when it finishes, it checks the article itself, the torque is correct, everything is correct. Mr. Sinha will know about it. Then only the second complementary process will start. Then only the tester will start. Then when we started testing, normally what do we think in testing? We check the mechanical parameters, we check the electrical parameters. We thought, how can we digitize the visual parameters? So we got an intelligent camera who will replicate and check the physical dimensions of the product. So slowly, I'm telling you, in a journey within a span of 12 months, we digitize the entire process, and it is a total foolproof process. The screwdriver completes all the processes. Tester checks it electrically, mechanically, as well as visually, and then it is clubbed to a Poka-yoke in a weighing machine, which checks whether the correct reference is there. And by the way, when you do the intelligent camera, it checks the delta E value also, means color references, and all those things are also checked. And the process became foolproof, and customers are very happy. So we have lived through this journey. It took us 12 to 14 months to complete the process, because that is why you understand your supply chain. You know where it is, and if you explain it in a proper way, your external partners, all internal partners will design a completely. That is why digital and tailored supply chain is very important.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ganju, for sharing that example, and for again, bringing to light certain concepts that can be used. For example, lean principles, TOC principles, this whole concept of smart signaling, alerts, mistake proofing, etc. Thank you so much for sharing that example, because digital, like all of you mentioned, is not only about using jazzy tools and big jargons and terms. It's about how it's actually going to impact your business. Moving on to Ms. Utturkar now, since she comes from an industry which is highly regulated, and where we have been reading a lot of case studies along implementation of blockchain, IoT to bring in transparency, visibility, to counter thefts and counterfeit cases, etc. So would just like to hear your views, ma'am, on this in terms of how one can go about an implementation journey. What are the sort of pitfalls you can think of, and how do you really advise the audience here in terms of choice of a partner, choice of a tool, and really prioritizing the whole thing in a meaningful way. Over to you, Mr. Turkar.
Uh, Thank you. And I think, as you rightly said, pharmaceutical market is such a regulated market, especially if you see the European market and the US FDA market. It is so very regulated that the supply chain is highly influenced by these regulations. Now, for example, if internally you want to get a tool which you want to use for your supplier management, and we have seen several of our, either in my previous organization or with our competitors also, where we have seen that we identify a tool, like as you said, there is a competitor who has got a tool and it is fantastic to go and do it. We implement it, and then you realize that what have you missed? You have such a lot of data, which is the right data which you wanted in that tool. Have you missed on getting the right data for analyzing? Have you gotten a tool which sits like a white elephant without analyzing the right data and giving you all the analytics that is required? And secondly, also there is the element of how it becomes much more complex if you start putting too much of your requirements into it, because there is one organization inside the company which says that I want to also see this data, and somebody says I want to see even this data, and then A, B, C, D, everything. And the moment you try to inbuild all the requirement into your tool, and if your tool is not designed to take such kind of complexities within it, the output will be so complex that it is no more user friendly, it is no more useful for the organization. So I think most important is that when you are thinking of digitalization, also think, do you have the right, have you identified the right kind of data that you want to be analyzed by the tool? Because without that, you will be just buying a tool for the sake of the tool. And even in a parallel, like if, for example, if you are looking at something like our electronic document management system for the pharmaceutical quality and regulatory guidelines, which is very terms of compliance with my quality documentation, and then you find that when your auditors come, you're trying to talk to 2 to 3 different systems then. But if you had one system which could talk to all these 3 different systems, then probably you would have made it much better. So when we talk of integration, you should identify a tool which is able to integrate these different systems which is required for compliances. You can't do it in such a way in bits and pieces that you are not able to see the full picture, because that is the visibility, the transparency that is required in a pharmaceutical market. So I think access to data and reducing the complexity is also extremely important. And if that is not done correctly, it could become a roadblock to the successful implementation of your digitization.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that perspective from the pharma industry. I think I'll move on to Mr. Vaidya now to share his perspectives and thoughts with regard to his own implementation experience, his own industry that he currently is in, and what sort of partnership models, or what partners you can bring on board, what tools you can use, any risks, pitfalls, anything that all of us need to keep in mind. Yes, Mr. Vaidya.
Right. So I think the first and the foremost thing which any organization has to see is what is it that you want, rather than what the seller is trying to sell you. I mean, there are solutions which are different for a service industry versus if you are a manufacturing organization. There are solutions which are different as per how they have been hosted. There are solutions which are different as per your size of industry also. So one, you have to be clear what is it that you want. So once that has been defined, the second thing that you have to look at is what is your current infrastructure. If I have to give an example, and this sometimes become a culture also, in Uber we do not have any solution which actually is a hosted solution. Any type of tool, right from email solution to analytics tools to our micro sites, everything is cloud based today. So it's in our culture that we don't even think of solution which needs a server to be placed in our organization, right, or any data center. So that comes as the second point. What is your current infra? The other piece that I would recommend, or I suggest one should always look at is what is the ease of upgrade of the technology or the tool that you are buying. It shouldn't happen that you buy it which is today best in class but is not capable of getting changed, or if it has to be changed, it comes with a huge cost. So take a decision, what would be your cost when you want to change. And the other piece definitely would be what kind of support or after sales support that you get from the companies. Many a time, you may get attracted towards, okay, it seems to be a big name with a decent pricing, but look at, do they really fare good in the after sale? So for that, you can always go for a lot of social reviews and all. I have been submitting my review on Gartner. So Gartner actually does it almost every quarter, wherein they reach out to people who use certain tools and they ask the whole life journey of the implementation after sales service, and they kind of evaluate who actually is a good provider when you have to evaluate. So these are some of the things. When I was referring to some of the tools that we use, I actually will give you some names which may or may not be popular today in the P2P domain or procure-to-pay domain, but for us they work pretty well. For example, we use Coupa for whole of our P2P. For tendering and RFX, we use a tool called Scout RFP. The reason why we selected, because they valued us. They said whatever change, whenever you want, this will come to you at a very, very low cost, irrespective of whatever is the change. And that is actually helping us. We kind of redesigned some of the functionalities in that tool with a very limited cost, and that suits our requirement. Those are the things that I would say I will always go with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vaidya, for your thoughts and perspectives and for simplifying this pretty complex topic. Moving on to Dr. Sinha, given his almost 4-decade experience with a giant named Godrej, and he's having worked in and headed virtually every function in every business within Godrej. I think we would love to hear his perspectives and thoughts on specific initiatives, examples, best practices, learnings from the FMCG, retail, CPG space. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. So there are a lot of examples, but I'll stick to just one example, which brings out an important point that we should keep it in mind, that digitization helps us in breaking several compromises. If you see currently the way other solutions work, a lot of them are based on optimization, which is another name for compromise. So if you want to achieve all the objectives simultaneously and break the compromises, then in several cases, digitization helps. I'll just give you one example. This is about a standard refill line, which has a bulk making and then several filling machines, capping, etc., and end of line automation. Very simple line. On this refill line, we had a regular quality check process, and as you know, one thing that brings down the responsiveness in almost all the companies is the quality process, which delays the flow of products. So every time we inspect something after it has been manufactured, it's a deterrent to improving responsiveness. So in this case, the data showed that roughly 2% of the production had to be reprocessed because in the sampling, it came out as deficient on one of the parameters, not completely rejected, but meant for reprocessing. And we weren't sure whether the 98% that is going to the market could have possibly 0.5%, which could have escaped this quality check process. Now, how do you improve it? There are several suggestions. One is, if you want to improve quality, can we put some online inspectors who would be there on the line and check and reject anything. The other option is to increase the sampling, but that would delay the dispatches even further and bring down responsiveness. Putting more online people on the line would mean higher cost. So how do we design a solution which improves quality, improves responsiveness, and improves cost? All the three. And the only way out in such cases when you are stuck with such problems is digital, if you think through it. So what we did was very simple. We used the digital technology of computer vision on the finished bottles. So what it does is on the line itself, if there is any bottle filled with liquid which is deficient on any one of the parameters, either the level of liquid or the wick inside is broken or chips or the cap is not put properly or any such thing, it will remove that from the line. And whatever passes through that computer vision check has to be 100% correct. So now after implementing this, there is no need for offline quality control checks. So the moment a product comes out of the line, it can straight away get dispatched and go to the customer. So we improved on responsiveness because taken away that 2 to 4 hours of quality check, sampling, quality check, the entire cost associated with the people and the effort of that and the time. Secondly, what it does is it also provides, very important, a fast feedback loop on the production process. So the moment a bottle gets rejected online after the passing through the computer vision station, we can immediately check whether some of the machine parameters have gone astray, and we need to reset some of the parameters so that we don't produce any more defect. So it gives additional benefit, brings down cost, improves quality and improves responsiveness. Now, if you want to improve on all the four simultaneously, the only way out is digital, because any amount of manual checking is not going to help it. So just one of like that, we have hundreds of places where we have implemented digital, but everywhere we have tried to get compromise. It must improve quality, it must improve my availability, it must improve my freshness, and it should result in lower effort from the employees. So it's not really, if I recall the famous line of the tyranny of or versus the genius of and. So it has to be the genius of and. We want this and this and this and this and this. So higher quality, lower cost, higher availability, and higher freshness. All the four things have to be done together. And you need to find a use case for such an application. And obviously, the payback is hardly ever in months. You get payback in days in case of such digital technology usage. And there is immediate buy-in from all the team because they can see the impact in a few days. It's not a question of designing, then getting a buy-in. To design, it appeals to everyone. You implement it, get the payback in a few days' time, and then keep reaping the benefit. So that's, in my opinion, is one way of improving. But you need to pick and choose as to where digital will make sense, where it helps you in breaking the compromises.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and giving us a very detailed example. I think I'll move into my final theme before we have the closing remarks from our panelists and we open it up for questions to the audience. My final theme for the discussion today, because another 10-12 minutes or so we can spend doing that, I think is around this whole concept of a supply chain or a logistics control tower or visual analytics or dashboards or call it whatever you will. Can we have a framework where because as supply chain logistics professionals, different industries have so many KPIs that they need to deal with. So what are some of those key performance indicators that need to be automated, and what are some of the tools that will really help business users upstream, downstream, and the entire business to really have a flavor of how the supply chain is performing or how healthy or unhealthy my supply chain is. So what are one of those, maybe if I may ask you, permit you to think of 2 or 3 key metrics, number one, and number 2, what are some of those, visual tools or dashboards or control towers, call it whatever you will. I would request each one of you to share your own perspectives on this, starting as always with Mr. Lazarus.
Okay, sure. Thank you for that. So I'm not going to spend more time on the metrics, but there is one metric, if you ask me, which is going to tell the health of the complete supply chain is OTIF, which is on time in full, which talks about whether you have serviced your customers in full, whether the product reached the customers on time as per the expectation of the customer. Okay, but crux of the time given to me, I'm going to focus on one of the biggest problems this industry faces. They use the word control tower. Immediately my mind goes to that. One side we are talking about analytics, we are talking about Power BI and everything, and other side, unfortunately, most of the job roles in the market talks about analytics, but it does only flashy dashboards of some event which has already happened. What is the fun in making a colorful dashboard and talk about, hey, this is how bad I am? That is unfortunately, that is what is happening in the market. So since there are a lot of students listening to this, if you are into analytics, I think your journey should go in a sequence. The first thing, whatever we talked about, this dashboards, very colorful dashboards, comes under descriptive analytics. It is important. I am not telling it is no. But descriptive analytics talks only about what...
That is the most flexible thing. So this is easily digitized and these days and plays a big role in customer satisfaction. So that can be done. from backend, some of the tools which we use in the supply chain, one of them is digital and on. It talks about the efficiency. It gives how much we had to produce, what used to is the takt time, what is the efficiency. It talks about that. Then there are certain easy the quality tools, we call them Q disks. They will talk you about process capability, CTPs, CTQs. So one end you are measuring efficiency, one end you are measuring quality, and through OTDC you can measure delivery. So these are three things. Ultimately, all KPIs will fall under three categories. Mostly will be quality, it will be cost, it will be delivery. So if we use these digital end-ons, we use these quality discs, and we measure the on-time delivery to customers. I think we'll be through. These are the simple tools today, and they are not very expensive, and it can be customized also as per the individual industry.
Quickly, Ms. Uturkar, very quickly, one or two KPIs that are top of the mind, very essential with regard to pharmacy, and then we'll move on to Mr. Vedya.
I think it's the most important thing is about for us, especially in the pharma industry, in a supply chain, is the service level to the customers. And that when it comes to supply chain, it translates to the OTIFs and the OTDs that we are speaking of. And as a tool, if we have to use, I think there are many ways to monitor and visualize these key performance areas. One is we can always have the SASVA reports that we have in-house. And then there is also a lot of RPA which is used for the reporting with all the data that is in-house. So we have those bots which work in terms of RPA and SASVA. I think as anytime data, you just quickly go onto your SASVA dashboard and you look at the data of how your suppliers are performing, how your OTIF is going on a daily basis. You get the visibility, and also for your inventory, like how your inventory at any given point, at which warehouse, how your inventory is. I think these two things play a very key role when we are looking at a supply chain. So inventory levels and your service levels are, I think, two very important elements for supply chain in the pharma industry.
Excellent, very well summarized. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Vedya?
So I think within the supply chain, the KPIs would differ from sub-function to sub-function. For example, logistics would have their own KPIs, sourcing would have their own, procurement would have their own. What we generally, kind of evaluate internally are what is it that the internal satisfaction score is, and what is it that the external satisfaction score is. So we try to measure it and basically ask about how was the timeliness of this particular project basis your expectation, rather than any benchmark or any number that you are aware of. If there was an urgency for this project to be done, because if it helps the organization, so give your satisfaction score around that. So we talk about the timeliness here, we talk about the accuracy, we talk about the engagement of the people who worked on it. So these are slightly different KPIs that we are tracking. These are something which are important for us. And I'll tell you, one very simple thing, that rating on Amazon's or even on Uber app, right? We actually do that internally with our customers as well as our suppliers also. Whenever my team does some strategic sourcing project, they will send a star rating to the customer, and then they have a choice whether they want to rate it 1 or 5 depending upon it. And there is nothing like why did you choose so? Whatever is coming to your mind, please do that, because that's how we kind of see the overall engagement. So yeah, those are the things. In terms of tools for reporting, we use Tableau mainly. So Tableau for us has been working pretty, very well,
Great.
So
Tableau. Great. Yeah. I think we lost Mr. Lazarus for a fleeting moment. He's back with us. So very quickly, next 30 seconds, before I move on to Dr. Singh.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly add only one point, because all the different tools and softwares we talk about related to dashboards are great, but more and more they should work towards leading indicators, because lagging indicators talk about an effect which has already happened, like a defect has happened. Now that is great to have, but quickly you should migrate towards predictive analytics. We can talk about telling, hey, this is my inventory position is going to be, rather than talking about an inventory turnover of this month or the last year. So this applies not just for the business, it works for anyone who wants to get into a fantastic analytics career. You should evaluate your career whether you are moving from descriptive analytics towards your predictive and prescriptive analytics. Thank you for providing the time again, so I made my point. Thank you.
Excellent, no worries. Absolutely not a problem. Thank you. Pleasure is entirely mine. Over to Dr. Sinha.
Yeah.
we close,
So,
yes.
so I'm building on my earlier point. There are only two things which are important from consumer point of view: availability and freshness. So internally, these two translate for the supply chain as one is which is discussed already, the on-time and full delivery, OTIF for the customers, and the second is the level of inventory that we are holding inside. Higher the inventory, lower would be the freshness when the products reach the consumer. So how do we improve OTIF continuously and reduce inventory simultaneously? So it's not a question of either or, it has to be and in OTIF, just one more pointer, that once we achieve close to 100% OTIF, our endeavor should be to promise faster delivery, and that will bring down the OTIF. So if we have been delivering something in 48 hours, can we promise that we'll deliver in 24 hours? And then, so that brings a competitive advantage to the company. So OTIF itself is not enough. How do we tighten the definition of OTIF is very important for improvement of the supply chain. And the ultimate sort of utopian dream, if I may take 10 seconds, is to reach the level of performance of power plants, which is the ideal, which means instant delivery and zero inventory.
Brilliant example. Very quickly to both the organizers today, Anirudh and her colleague, I just want to understand, do we have time for closing remarks? Can we spend 5 minutes or should we jump into the questions from the students? How much time do we have? It's 12:47. What do you suggest, Anirudh?
It's better to have a closing remark.
Yeah, it's better to have a closing.
Okay, great. So we have time, right? Excellent. So I think I'll start with Mr. Lazarus again. Quickly, you can spend a minute. Closing thoughts, comments, key
Sure.
insights.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me put across very quickly my closing remark, which is the biggest takeaway. That is what I consider that as. For example, recently I was in a discussion with one of my entrepreneur friend who's into an ERP firm. He's basically into an ERP firm. When we were discussing, we realized we at Hizol, we are a completely problem-solving focused firm. We do more number of projects in technology more than his firm. The reason when we analyze it, because whenever you are working on a technology, whenever you are selling a technology, you are already having a solution and you are going to try to fit it. That doesn't work out. We always work with what is the problem and go and find which suits it. The reason why I'm telling this as a closest remark is, we are living in a world where moment something is picking up, everyone will add that to it. Organic foods picked up, everyone started putting organic into the packs. Now digitizing supply chain is the buzzword. Now even a small sensor manufacturer is going to tell this is an IoT product. So organizations have to be 100, not 100, 200% sure. You need to work from your process. What is the issue? What is the benefit? Go and find then the solution for it. Thank you so much for this opportunity for today.
I think very well articulated and summarized. I'll now quickly move on to Mr. Ganju. Your closing thoughts, sir.
Yeah, so the topic itself is interesting, was the VUCA world. So when you have a VUCA world, how can you have without smart factories and flexible factories and tailored supply chains? How can you have a world exist without that in a VUCA world? So I would say that when you talk about smart, flexible and tailored supply chains, so the basic important is we have to focus on, first, we should have smart people, then we should have smart processes, and finally we should have smart infrastructure. And trust me that we don't have to look at big investments in small things can be done. We have to practice them ourselves, make it happen, let everybody taste the success stories, build on their dreams, build the story, see the success, and then go big. So anything which can help us in predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive analytics is digitization. And ultimately, the aim of digitization has to delight our customers. It has to delight them in quality, it has to delight them in cost, it has to delight them in delivery aspects. Whatever they want, whenever they want, the more flexibility and more tailored we are, it should benefit to the consumers, because ultimately consumer is the king.
Excellent. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts, very well articulated. May I now bring in Ms. Uturkar for our closing remarks? Yeah.
I think like what I had stated earlier, I would like to again reiterate that know what your customer needs. know where you want to make the change within the organization, and then design how you want to bring that change. And that can be done with the n number of tools that you have, the infrastructure that you have, but choose wisely considering what you have within and what you want outside for the customer. And one thing which I would still like to underline is that we should have able leadership while we are doing all of this. We should have a able leadership which will take us through this journey, who are able to take quick and wise decisions within all these changes, somebody who are really quick to take it forward. And whenever you choose on a project or a strategy, you should also be able to know if it is not working, have the wisdom to stop that project and turn it around into something in a different path, rather than stick to it and take it into a doom then.
And I think that needs a lot of courage, easier said than done. Based on my experience also, many people don't do it. They really don't raise their finger when things go wrong. As long as everything is okay, it's fine. So thank you for bringing that.
Typically what we say in our organization is don't fall in love with your ideas. The moment you think it is not working, drop it. And that's what I think even Steve Jobs said while he was working in Mac.
Thanks for bringing that dimension. I think it's wonderful. Mr. Vedya?
So I would say when we talk about